and welcome to Have Your Say. I'm Ann Minicozzi, president of the Community Breakfast Collaborative of the Main Line, here with our co-host Diana Robertson, who is second vice president of the NAACP of the state of Pennsylvania. And we are very happy, first of all, to be in the studio again. We're all vaccinated and broadcasting from Wayne, from MLTV Mainline Network, so very happy to be here in person. And we're also really happy to have, as our guest today, Chef Keith Taylor. And Chef Keith is the president of Chef Soul Culinary Productions and also owner of Zachary's Barbecue, which is in several locations. And so we're going to hear from Chef Keith today, who is involved in a lot of things in the community besides culinary related activities, but also quite an expansion of those besides Zachary's Barbecue. So thank you so much for being here and welcome to Have Your Say. Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And what we usually start off with is asking our guests to provide some background information, biographical information, a little bit about your personal story before we get into all the things that you do. So what you feel like sharing that way.
Oh, number one thing I share is food. But just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am from a very small hometown. Very similar to Radnor. I moved to Radnor about 20 years ago. I grew up in North Jersey, in Nutley, New Jersey. That's exit 150 on the Parkway. And it's still my hometown, still my favorite place, and we call it the center of the universe. Ended up coming to Pennsylvania to actually revamp food services, retail food services at the University of Pennsylvania. I got recruited to come here at the end of that contract, or during that contract. They actually moved me here to my first home in the area on Callanan Avenue in Bryn Mawr. Excuse me. Contract ended. My wife and I decided I'd continue doing a ton of consulting, and we decided to make the mainline area our home. We love it. Started doing Zachary's in the area probably 15 years ago. We've already put 2 kids through Radnor schools, and we have 2 more coming up. We still have a 13-year-old and a 5-year-old that'll be going to Wayne Elementary.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So we like it here.
That's great. And now, also, as I was learning about you, as we were talking before we scheduled the interview and everything, that you are a veteran. And I thought it would be worthwhile to talk about that because we're coming up on Memorial Day as we're recording.
All right. Wow. I attended Cornell University, and even though being accepted, my family couldn't afford. So at the time, the Army had something very cool. They had a GI Bill, they had the Montgomery Bill, they had the VEAP, which is the Veterans Education Assistance Program. They had a 3-for-1. Literally, they were throwing more money at high school grads back in the early 80s, to the point that it not only paid for Cornell, paid for the Culinary Institute, it also paid for my first apartment and probably a couple parties. So, yeah, that was it. You know, so I was in the 82nd Airborne, did some Ranger training, and then ended up. It was just a good experience. I was in the first of 508th Airborne Infantry. Obviously, being down on Ardennes Avenue and being in Fort Bragg is a great experience. And I think it really prepared me for college. You know, I had friends of mine that went to school that probably poo-pooed their parents' money away, whereas I was in the military first. And it's amazing how the military can bring a young man's maturity level a little higher. So that was an important piece, good experience. And then from there, I went to college, the Culinary Institute. From there, what's really cool is that Disney pulls from the graduating list at Cornell and the Culinary Institute, and I got the opportunity to be a part of something called DMDP, which is the Disney Management Development Program. So in that program, I ended up being recruited to do the program, which is just 6 months of tasks and training and management and all that kind of good stuff. Placed at the Grand Floridian Beach Resort, worked there for a wonderful chef named Bob Notary. He has passed away since. But, you know, if you know anything about Disney or Disney Resorts Division, that particular hotel was a flagship hotel with, excuse me, with 12 food outlets. So I just got a vast amount of experience being a part of that program because I ran the commissary. It was one of my first tasks, and commissary basically represents the ability to provide food for the other 12 food outlets. So Narcoossee's, Flagler's, Victoria and Albert's, Floridian Cafe, Summersby, Narcoossee's, I go on and on. That's where the base or the core of those foods came, and I really became a master of not just working in hotels or in the best hospitality environment, but it also put me in a position where that I got the opportunity to really hone in on what I think is probably one of the best ways to run multi-unit operations, which is through a commissary.
Listening to you and how you were able to take advantage of opportunity, education, experience, and to be able to be where you are today, it makes me think with the generation today who many like to think they can just walk in, be at the top, and and that's all. What are your feelings, and what would you your recommendations be to students, especially those who do maybe have a good sense of what they want to do, but even those who don't, in terms of how they utilize education and experience?
So a lot of questions.
I
there
know.
No, but it's okay because I'm a very big fan of a few important things. One, leadership is ridiculously important. I have conversations with people about youth. One of the things I'm always talking about is the young men and women under my leadership in my kitchens. And the biggest thing I preach is something called the BHAG. So your BHAG is, just as the 4 letters entail, it's your big, hairy, audacious goal. All right. And one of the things that I think is very important, or doesn't happen enough with young people, is that they're not taught to pursue goals. They're taught to pass tests. They're taught to chase money. They're not taught to pursue their happiness. And I always say to people that, the goal is really what's key. Let me give you a good example. What's the last trip that you went on where you got in your car and you had to go somewhere where you haven't been before? Where'd you go?
Oh gosh, I have to think about that.
Let me see. Well, a month ago, although I've been there before, but since the pandemic, we went to Hilton Head.
Okay, you went to Hilton Head. Did you drive?
Yes, we drove.
Okay, when you drove, did you have to put something into your phone to say the address of where you're going?
Yes.
Okay, so you plugged a destination into your GPS. All right, and that at that moment, when you plugged that destination into your GPS, went through its permutations and algorithms, and seconds later, it told you where you were going, how long it would take, and the best route to get there.
Right.
All right.
Right.
So that's what I call career GPS when you hear me talk about a big, hairy, audacious goal. Kids don't have a BHAG, nor are they taught to have a BHAG. So if somebody says, I want to become a pastry chef, well, they could go to culinary school. They could say, I want to be a pastry chef. They could watch TV. They could do any number of things. But what they really need is the ability to choose a destination and then be able to map out, how do I get there? And one of the biggest keys and one of the biggest challenges for young people, they go to college with a degree that really doesn't get them a job. They do some training, but the training really isn't geared towards what they like. So they do it for a while and either they fail or they lose interest. And I say that one of the most important things that people could do is have a BHAG and say, where do I want to go? And learn that at a very, very young age. And I'm saying it could start at grammar school at some level. But by the time you hit high school, you've got an idea of a target. Now, if you don't choose a destination, what happens? What does your phone say? It says redirect, 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 redirect. And that's exactly what happens with their careers. Because they get in these jobs, or maybe they achieve a middle management position, and they're there 4, 5, 6, 8, God forbid, 10 years. And they're like, I got this job, but I'm not really happy, or I don't really like it, or what's the next step, or how do I achieve, or how do I go to the next level? And all that is lost because they never chose a destination. You see, when you choose a destination, what happens is, if I say, I want to be a municipal attorney, I want to be a public defender. Well, if I wanted to be a public defender, which has nothing to do with my career, now I have a target. And when I have a target or I have a destination, now I can do the things that are important. I can look up more about that job. I can say to myself, I'm going to look for 10 mentors and hope that 3 will accept me. I can actually map how I'm going to get there instead of saying, well, I heard I can get a job as a paralegal and that's going to pay me $10 an hour, but it won't pay my rent. But now I'm there, and is that really getting me to where I want to be?
Right.
Or am I a paralegal in a firm where the owner or the employer knows that my goal is to be a public defender? They're going to help me do the things that are necessary to get to that place where my goal is.
Right.
And it's okay if your goal changes.
Yeah.
Because if you have a goal, that means, okay, it's happened before. What does it say? New ride, new destination. You're
Right.
plugging in a new address. And now instead of going all over here,
Right.
you're like, okay, that's my new destination. And I'm going to find the best way to get there instead of going all these different directions. So back to your question, when you asked me, what do I think is the best advice? I'm one of those geeks that knew what I wanted to do before I had a driver's license. My first job had me working in a local bar, cooking hamburgers that they were famous for making on English muffins.
Okay.
You know? But that's what I did when I was 15, a place
Right.
called Yesterday's in Clifton, New Jersey, next
Okay.
town over. But the funny thing is, I had a BHAG.
Right. Right.
And I'm saying that being goal-oriented and helping kids understand to pick a goal, and that it's okay if that goal changes,
Okay.
but to have a goal no matter what,
Yeah.
so that they're not wasting time. And I
Right.
think that teaching, I think that education, I think that pedagogy in itself should be driven towards goals.
Yep. Well, building on that,
Yes.
you, the way that I learned how you had this interest in leadership, and you really do encourage teamwork and mentoring the people that you work with. But then you seem to take that not just in Zachary's, not just in the restaurant, but then in all kinds of other organizations. And we talked briefly about your affiliation with Monco Works, where
Yes.
that's also working with young people.
Yes,
Right.
well, it's not just young
And
people.
can you just describe a little bit of
Sure.
what that is also?
Maybe 5 or 6 months ago, I got a call from one of the people that run Monco Works. Like, I guess my name and came across because everybody was in the process of applying for grants and loans and things that were associated with COVID connect to their business.
Right.
And I received a call asking would I be interested in being on the board for Monco Works. And I thought it was good. I was really humbled by it because I have like being on someone's board just wasn't one of my goals. Right?
Right. It wasn't your BHAG.
Right. I'm busy trying to create opportunities for the people on my team. But then my director of business operations, Yolanda, says, "Chef, did you look at their mission and what they do and whatever?" And once I looked into it, I was like, "This is right up my alley. It gives me the
Yep.
opportunity to do the one thing that sometimes it's tough." Remember, Monco Works is the governing body or organization that manages those funds and resources that come from CareerLink. So if you are underemployed, unemployed, looking for employment, trying to get employment training, and any of those things that are connected to being employed, that organization is called PA CareerLink. And Monco Works is the branch that manages those funds and opportunities and resources in Montgomery County. Now, they found out about me because I'm very passionate about Montgomery County. I built my first restaurant there and did very well, and then put Zachary's there and done some other things in town. And I saw it as this great opportunity to connect to more students, to more underemployed people, to work with people through the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit and do the things that help people get to work or get the training that's necessary. And I also found out about the resources that were available to employers like myself and other employers where there are grants and opportunities where I know that it costs me between $3,200 and $3,800 to train an employee. I'm a leader when it comes to what I do as far as, not that I'm some huge company or some super rich guy, but I'm a leader when it comes to paying a fair or living wage. So my cooks, even my dishwashers, make $15 per hour. That's long before there was some cry for it by the government.
Right.
Yeah.
So the whole idea was, okay, when you start working with me, You make $12 per hour. You train for 6 weeks. I have a documented training program with measurables, and at the end of those 6 weeks, you are making $15 an hour. And you also know what the next step is, or what you're going to do, or what
Right.
one of the challenges with conditions in the food and beverage industry is that the average owner is like, "Oh, you're doing great as a cook, and you know what? We love you there, and like I have no plans for what you're going to do after that."
Right.
That's a bad leader.
Yeah.
You see, a good leader is doing everything that he can to put these people in a position to put your teammates and all those young men and women that work under your leadership and give them opportunities. And if they're doing a great job in your organization, that leaves me free as a leader to go create more opportunity.
Right.
So that cook can become a sous chef, so that sous chef can become an assistant manager, so that assistant manager can become a GM. So I can open more locations and they can actually get skin in the game and say, you know what, you get your salary plus you've got 10% equity in this company. And that's how it should be.
Right.
But I see also the way that you think and approach the different activities that you do. You are helping young people with
yeah.
their BHAG.
Yeah, I can
Right.
tell. Well, here's the funny thing. Because that's not what's taught at school, the kids that work with me learn it. Some don't get it. I lose some. I can't help them.
Yeah.
But here's a great example. Kyle, I'm going to use your name because I just love you and you're a great example. Kyle Edmonds was a young man in Norristown. I love this kid. Kyle wasn't doing well in high school, so they send you to the high school for the bad kids. Goes to the high school for the bad kids, and from there becomes a part of the Central Monaco Tech program. All right? Which in turn is another place where it's like this dumping ground within
Right.
schools, which I think is terrible. I'm on the OIC for the technical school.
Okay.
I meet and talk with the instructors and to help shape the program as a professional from the outside. And I'm also recruiting because I take on 4 high school interns per year. Kyle's name comes up.
Okay.
Keith, if you can do anything with him, God bless you. All right? Kyle comes to work for me. I must have fired Kyle 5 times. Kyle must have quit 5 times. But Kyle learned. Kyle now has a child, has a car, has a home. He is a responsible and exemplar of a culinary professional at the Bluebell Country Club. And we communicate on a regular basis.
Okay.
But all of those systems, we're just trying to find ways to push him aside. And now he's a professional that any chef would want as a part of his team.
Right.
Kyle didn't have a BHAG. All right. But as a leader, I also have to represent and give you a visible example.
Right.
Young man, young woman, black man, diverse, Asian, island, Pacific, whatever. It doesn't matter. There has to be more examples that are teaching and training and talking and showing, hey, if this is what you want to do, don't just look at me. I'm going to do everything I can to help you.
Is there's the place in the process where someone has the BHAG, but there's this place before that where the individual can't imagine that they could be someone that they want to be.
You know,
They
I love
don't
everything you're
see
saying.
those examples.
Yeah.
Like you can't conceive of, and this happened to me when I was in high school, that I couldn't
talk about this.
imagine. I couldn't imagine being, I couldn't imagine going to college.
I love it. Hear me out. This is what's really funny.
So what do you do about that?
Well, I'm going to add something to it. My Uncle Arthur, Vice President for Finance Administration, City University of New York, a great educator. And he said something so important to me once. He said, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And that stuck with me when I was a kid, when he had me going through Project Deep and all these extra programs when I was in high school. You got to be smarter, you got to be faster, you're black, you got to this, you got to that. And he said, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So that means exposure.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So here's what's great. And I can only speak for the culinary industry because it happens to be one of those industries for the last 15 years. Yeah. It's on TV, there's a Food Network, they see everybody in the white jacket, you just assume like, boom, that's it. They don't tell the story of how hard that guy had to work.
Yeah. Yes.
Or the first 20 years before he was on TV, what he did, how many jobs he had to eat, how many 20-hour days, how many 80-hour weeks. Doesn't talk about any of that. So the Kyles of the world, now they're seeing that on TV. Shiny white jacket, I want to be that guy.
Right.
No clue how to get there.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's not reality because that guy on TV is one of 100,000 people that put on that jacket, and the other 999,000 don't even have it, will never be on TV.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Never. So there has to be more live examples. So when you say you couldn't see yourself in college, to me, for me, it always comes back to parenting, and unfortunately, some people don't have two parents or even one parent. So that means as a community, we are responsible for doing whatever we can to make it so those opportunities are out there to see or be seen, and to make it so some reality is shared. Right. And I can say, once again, back to the educational piece, getting people to start thinking about goals. Right. I'm teaching my 13-year-old, my 5-year-old. Not that it's easy. Every parent struggles with this. But the point is that that kind of thinking has to start now before we have a labor force that is just clueless. Or so late to the game that they are not productive. Or even worse, that they are disappointed.
Right. And I totally agree with the goal piece because I can remember being a part of a program where we were encouraging students, well, first in working with the students, asking them the questions. So they were high school students, juniors and seniors, and so that was like one of the first questions. So what is it you want to do? You know, and they were naming all these different professions, and then when you looked at their coursework and their grades, and I'm like,
incongruent.
Yeah, I was like, do you understand what it takes to be this person? Do you even understand what that is, you know? And most of them did not. And there were a few people who actually said, well, you know what? Nobody's ever asked me that question.
Yeah.
You know, nobody's ever asked me the question. So, you know, I'm just thinking about college because everybody just keeps talking about college, but nobody ever asked them the question.
You know, college is kind of dead end too.
Yeah, as to what you want to do. What is it you want to be? Where do you see yourself 5 years from now when you graduate?
Yeah.
And when I go and I talk at schools or at Montco or Delco or I just did the commencement at the Culinary Institute in Virginia or wherever I'm at. One of the things I talk to the students, not during commencement, when I get the opportunity to talk in their classes, is what do you love? What would you do? And it sounds crazy, but what would you do if you never got paid?
Yep.
And I say that to people because it's all tied to this BHAG thing. If you enjoy drinking water, I can tell you that I guarantee there's a way you can make a career out of that. Do you know that there are, I'd say at least 1,000 people in this country that are employed and get paid well just to taste, sample, and evaluate water?
Wow.
So that's my point. My point is that there is no crazy idea. You see, a BHAG is not impossible and might be difficult, definitely attainable, but how valuable is being happy?
Right.
So if you're doing what you love, or you're doing what you want to do, eventually you'll become good at it. And if you become good at it, you'll become recognized for it. And you will have a choice whether or not you want to capitalize or say, I want to keep it low key. So do what makes you happy. So when I'm talking to these kids in school, my first conversation, I say to adults, they're like, oh, but I got to make money. I'm like, okay, then make money, be unhappy. That's your choice.
But the other thing that I think that's important to point out through everything that you're saying is at a certain point, each person has to direct their own educational journey and their own life journey.
Right.
They have to take that initiative, and they can.
Well, they can, but the more important piece, and this goes back to the education piece, imagine if we taught goals. If we taught, because then there are steps.
Right.
There are steps to, okay, well, all right, I have a goal, so what do? Well, I always tell people, I said, go online and find the 10 best people at what you do, at what you want to do. Now, 9 out of 10 are going to be like, who are you? I don't have time for you. Click. All right? I say 1 to 3 are going to say, how can I help you?
Yep.
And that's where you start.
Right.
I want to know how you got from point A to point B. One's going to tell you, well, you don't want to take the route that I took. Another one's going to say, you know what, after watching and knowing what you know or knowing what I've learned, here's what I suggest. And one's going to say, I'm invested. How'd you like to come work with me? But my point is that that's just one of the many steps once we are teaching people that let's become more goal-oriented.
Right.
You see, the big, hairy, audacious goal, and I keep talking about this BHAG because I think it's so important, is that if you have a BHAG, and I decided my BHAG is to be right where that cup is, and I'm starting over here, all right, and I may not get there. If I end up here, I did pretty good.
Right. Right.
As opposed to sitting here talking about, I don't know what I want to do.
Not moving.
I'm still here at Wawa for 4 years. Not that Wawa is a bad job. My point is that making goals become the thing that they're trying to push for,
Yeah.
or at least being taught, and then
Right.
being taught how to process the process. Is it school?
Right.
Is it finding mentors, developing a mentor-disciple relationship? Is it research and study? Is it out there doing the job? Or when you're doing the process, here's the beauty of teaching about the BHAG, you may find out, oh, I don't know if I want to do this for 8 years to get to there.
Right.
And you may get a new BHAG.
Right.
Right.
And that's
Right.
fine.
Right.
But because we're teaching people how to plug in a destination in their GPS first, they're not spending years
Right.
redirect,
Yeah.
redirect,
Right.
and disappointment.
Right. Oh goodness, this is great conversation.
I agree.
And as our time is winding up, our time is winding up.
That's
but
what I think the community can do. It's
Yeah.
all of us as an individual, but I really think that whether it's community help
Yeah.
or in the education system,
Right.
that conversation about goals really does become a big piece. And I'm not like some motivational speaker or something. This is something almost anybody can do. And I think maybe it's the way that guidance counseling needs to be changed, or who knows. But if everybody in education was on that path of saying we're really trying to help these kids find their goals. Now they say middle school is like the toughest place a kid can be. It's
Right.
puberty. They don't know where they're going to be, who they are. They're growing at a ridiculous rate. They don't know what they're doing. But
Yeah.
it's this place where I think that education starts. Even if I don't want someone to pick a BHAG in middle school, but I do want them to start thinking about, what is a goal? And maybe there's a way to teach it. I'm not a teacher, so that's up to teachers.
Right.
But my point is just planting those seeds.
Right. Well, we thank you for your information, your wisdom,
Sure.
and as we, our listening audience has heard what you had to say. I think through the educational system, through just parenting, through all of these
Parenting's huge.
entities,
Right.
that we will be able to, folks will be able to have their say in regard to how we move things forward in providing the most for our children. Thank you again.
You're welcome.